Good morning, church. Welcome back on this second Sunday in May. Today, Pastor Wayne, Pastor Wayne isn't here today. I'm filling in for him. I finally got the pulpit. No, seriously. Pastor Wayne is on week 2 of his message series, Guardrails, and today we celebrate Mother's Day. Then this will certainly be different for moms. But then everything we are doing is different. And by the way, Pastor Wayne begged me to do the opening for our service today. And that's the truth. As we look back over the past 7 weeks, life has changed. Our worship has changed, the way we touch others in a touchless world. The life of the church has changed, and it certainly hasn't stopped. It's just changed. We still gather to worship as a church family, and our family has even grown through those joining us through our social media church. Even though things look differently, there are many things we are excited about. And here are some of the different ways that ministry is still happening. People continue to reach out to the church family through mailings, phone calls, and social media. Weekly gatherings of connection groups by Zoom meetings. Children involved in activities that Pastor Heidi is supplying for them. Youth groups are connecting through Zoom meetings, and they are learning and having fun in new and creative ways. Men's group reaching out and touching lives, assisting and helping others. God is still in control, and moving ministry is still happening. COVID-19 may have redirected us, but it has not stopped us from sharing the love of Jesus. Something else that is exciting is how God is providing financially through your offerings. Excuse me. We appreciate your dedication and faithfulness of your financial gifts. Your gifts continue to support the ministries that are happening through you. Giving of your offering is an act of worship as we continue God's work. So you can worship in giving your financial gifts by mailing to the church at 475 Shippensburg Road, Newville 17241. Online giving through our website at www.TCP.Church. And for those who are coming to the parking lot, a bucket will be under the porch in the front of the church. Be sure to mark on the front of your envelope any designated gifts to Paul Pax or to the gathering. God loves those who are cheerful givers and blesses those who are faithful. May you be blessed as you give to him. Our church leaders are looking at taking the necessary steps to regather for our worship service. There are many things to consider on how we can do this safely. For the month of May, we will continue our live stream on Facebook and YouTube, and we have now added our gathering in the parking lot, where you can tune in on your car radio to station FM 91.1. Someone will greet you as you enter the church parking lot to welcome you. Just a reminder, please help us with social distancing and remain in your cars. As we begin our worship service this morning, let me share this for all you moms who have gathered with us. 3 little things that I found, and these were written by first graders to their mothers. Dear Mom, thank you so much for being my mom. If I had a different mom, I would punch her in the face, and then I'd go find you. And that was signed by Brooke. This one says, my mom is 13 years old, and she is maybe 17 feet tall, and she weighs 10 pounds. Her favorite food is cheesecake. She likes to go to the beach and bury me. She's good at skipping, and if I had $1 million, I would buy my mom ladybugs and butterflies. I love my mom because she's beautiful, and she always buys me ice cream. My mom is nice except when she takes my money behind my back out of my bank. My mom isn't very good. She's not a very good cook. Once I was sick and I couldn't go to church because it must have been in my mom's cooking. My mom isn't exactly the best, but she lets me do the watching magazines and videos. I like my mom a lot. At least she gives me maybe some food and some cookies now and then. But she's just not a very good cook. But I do love my mom. She is awesome. And so I'd like to relate some stories about my mom. I've never thought of myself as being much like my mother. I look like my dad. I identify with my dad more, and I considered myself closer to him. At times I even thought I was Daddy's little girl. But I've been surprised that it has been my mother's death that I have grieved most passionately. As I get older, and especially the 2 months of quarantine, I realize I'm more like her than I ever thought I would be. I am becoming my mother. My mother was born in 1908, and her childhood was severely impacted by the Depression. She lived through very tough times, but it taught her to be frugal with food and material goods. I know as some of my older siblings were growing up, my mom found scraps for everything. Even the cotton sacks that flour came in. The flour companies soon learned that many little girls were wearing dresses made out of flour sacks and began printing the fabrics with colorful prints. With Mother's Day rapidly approaching, I think of my mother frequently. I try to channel a little of her attitude and strength, but I usually come up short. When I say I've been becoming my mother, it is more of a hope than a reality. I looked at my arms the other day and I called my daughter and said, "I'm turning into your grandmother. I have my mother's arms." I may not be washing my plasticware like my mother and eating beans. However, I am trying to be like her. My mother's grandchildren say, "I miss Grammy. She was a perfect grandma and she loved with all her heart." And I can only hope that my grandchildren can remember me that way. But I will stop short of wearing dresses made out of flour sacks. I can only dream of being the strong, Christian, competent woman my mother was. When my mother would say, "Do you want a piece of advice?" it was really just a mere formality, because it didn't matter if you answered yes or no, you were going to get it anyway. My mother was the bones of my spine, keeping me straight and true. She was my blood, making sure that it ran rich and strong. She was the beating of my heart. I couldn't imagine life without her, but she's been gone now for 25 years, and I still grieve for her, and I miss her deeply. And now an invitation to worship. One of my favorite places to go, of course, as everyone knows, is Cape May. But one little known fact about Cape May is every evening from May to September, they fly a flag at Sunset Beach. And for over 40 years, they have lowered this flag at sunset, and they only use a flag that was from a deceased veteran to commemorate his service to the USA. Usually there is a family member there to fold and receive the flag, as Kate Smith sings the national anthem. As the sun sets and the glorious scene which only God can create unfolds, it's a splendor how anyone could ever dispute the fact that this is our Father's world. I go to the beach to enjoy the beauty and the waves of the ocean. The fascinating thing is when you sit and actually listen to the ocean, you wonder what lies out there in the waters, the great unknown. As I sit and watch the waves roll in, I think, here's my worries, my fears, my doubts. Take them, Lord, and lighten my burden. As the waves roll back out, I feel the relief that God has them, and now all will be okay. It is a blessing to know that whatever great mysteries lie before us, whether in the depths of the ocean or in the future of our lives, the challenge for us to keep our eyes focused above the waves and upon the Lord. In the embrace of Jesus, we know our souls can find peace and rest.
call me out upon the waters, the great unknown, where feet may fail. And there I find you in the mystery, in oceans deep, my faith will stand. Rise, my soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours. You are mine. Your grace abounds in deepest waters. Sovereign hand will be my guide. Where feet may fail and fear surrounds me, you've never failed, and you won't stop now. So I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours, and you are mine. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters, wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters, wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. And take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. And take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith would be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Oh Jesus, my God, I will call upon your name. Keep my eyes above the waves. My soul will rest in your embrace. I am yours, and you are mine.
Good morning and welcome, Peg, for sharing those announcements with us this morning and leading us into our worship service. I hope you enjoyed worshiping with that song, Oceans. It's just a tremendous song to just begin our time together, thinking about those waves of the water, the ocean waves coming in and out. Life just comes and goes, and it's a great, I think, introduction to what we're going to be talking about today. I want to start off with a question. Have you ever met someone that later you wish you had never met? Have you ever met someone that later you wished you had never met? Now, no elbows knocking the person beside you, but or maybe you want to think about the question this way. Has your wife or your husband ever met someone you wish they never met? Or maybe have your kids met people that you wish they never met? And this list can go on. For most of us here today or listening on Cyberland, there are people in our lives or were in our lives that we wished we had never met. And often it is those people who are connected to our greatest regrets in life. And many times, those people are or were friends, someone that we had a previous relationship with. Today we are in part 2 of our series, Guardrails. Last week, as we opened up the series, if you missed it, you can catch part 1 on our YouTube channel or Facebook channel. But just a quick introduction, a quick review. We know that guardrails are often located along the highways. It is a system designed to keep vehicles from straying off into the danger zone, off the side of the road, or off the curves, over the bridge, whatever it may be. And as we said last week, guardrails do 2 things. They direct us and they protect us. The other thing about a guardrail is that it becomes important as we talk about how guardrails apply to our lives. It is that guardrails are never placed in a danger zone. Guardrails are actually placed out on the roadway a little bit, or along the edge of the road, placed in the safety zone to protect us from getting over too far. Guardrails are designed to minimize the danger to our vehicles, to our damage there. And if you hit a guardrail, you may have to go to a body shop to get your car fixed, but at least you may not have to go to the hospital, depending how hard you hit it. So, for the month of May, we'll be in this series of messages on guardrails. Now, the highway is not the only place we need guardrails. We need guardrails in our personal lives. We need financial guardrails. We need moral guardrails. We need relationship guardrails, sometimes professional guardrails. And the truth is, as we're going to be talking about today, some of your regrets in life may have been able to have been avoided if you had certain kinds of guardrails established in your life. Some of your greatest regrets in life may have been avoided if you had moral or financial or relational guardrails. So that's what we're going to talk about today, are some guardrails about friendships. And as I said last week, we live in a culture or in a world where our culture doesn't value the idea of guardrails. You know, they're fine to have some painted lines along the edge of the highway just to kind of guide us a little bit, but guardrails are much more like rules. And most of us, I know you and I, probably don't like to have a lot of rules about how we live. But that's what guardrails do. So people in our culture will sometimes be critical of us when we establish these guardrails, and then they'll turn around and they'll shame us, or they'll blame us, or they'll mock us when we end up in the ditch in certain areas of our lives. So guardrails don't direct and protect so much in the category of right or what's wrong, but they do more guiding and protecting of us and helping us to see what the wise thing is for us to do. And that's what we're going to look at as we go in today. So today I want to talk to you about what it means to establish guardrails in the realms of your friends and associates. There are people you run with, people that you play with, you go to school with, people that you work with, and these are the people you spend a lot of the time in your life with. And the reason we need guardrails relationally, even with the people we may consider friends or school partners, whatever it is because many times our greatest regrets in life happen with these people, those who we call our friends. So, as I go along today, you may be tempted to think, wow, that preacher's being really judgmental. These are my friends. These are my associates that he's talking about. And what I want to share with you today is not about being judgmental towards others. The message is about making and exercising good judgment. And there's a big difference. So let me explain it like this. Judgmental is me forming an opinion about you. It's forming an opinion about what you should do or what you should stop doing or what you didn't do. Being judgmental is setting myself up as a judge, and I'm not the judge. Judgmental is when I draw a critical or maybe a harsh conclusion about expecting you how you should act or be different. Good judgment is different. Good judgment is about me and what I choose to do or how I choose to respond. Now, one thing I read says good judgment is about making wise decisions. Good judgment is not about me making decisions for your life, but it is something that I can use to hopefully help you and myself make wise choices. so that later you don't have regrets about what you did or didn't do. Let me explain it like this. When you were a child, or maybe when you were a teenager, and your parents, or maybe it was your grandparents, you were paranoid about your friends. In fact, many times they would say things like, you can remember them saying things like, you can't go over there, she can't come over here, you can't date her, and the list goes on. And they would forbid you to hang out with them. Now, for you girls, not so much for you boys, but maybe you girls had a secret diary hidden in your room some way, and your moms would sneak in the room. Excuse me. They would sneak in the room so they could read all the stuff you wrote about your friends, and she would find out all this juicy stuff, and then you would find out that she read this, and she was angry, and you would get angry. And some of you know exactly what I mean. You know what happens. And parents will do whatever they could do to keep you away from certain boys, certain girls. Some got extreme. Some maybe pulled you out of a school that you were attending. Some maybe even packed up and moved to a new area to keep you away. And so when you're on the receiving end of that, your response, like most kids, would be saying, Mom, Dad, you're being so judgmental. You're judging my friends. Now, when I ask the question, have you ever met somebody you wished you'd never met? Some of you went as far back as your grade school or high school and remember some of the regrets you had because of somebody who was your friend or friends back then. What your mama knew back then is what the things were that were happening in your friendships and relationships that could either be very healthy or be very negative. Now, for you parents today, you have some great advantages over what your parents had when you were younger. Today, you can stalk your kids' friends. It's so true because of social media. By the time you meet your kids' friends, you already know everything about them. You know what their hobbies are, what they like to do. You know what their parents do, where they live, they work. And, and some people must say that's being judgmental. No, that's just being nosy. But it's because that you care that you do those things. And it's because you care about your children that God has put in your home, you do those things. And when you come down hard on them, they say, you're being so judgmental. And as a parent, you're saying, no, I'm just exercising good judgment. There's a difference. And the reason is because our friends determine the direction and the quality of our lives. Let me say that again. Our friends determine the direction and the quality of our lives. This is so true. Let me say it this way. At any age or any stage of your life, the things that make friendships marvelous is also the things that makes them very hazardous and dangerous. Things about make a great friendship or a great group of associates that you work with is that you have many things in common. And it's easy and it's so tempting to just be sitting back and relaxing. And when you do that with your friends, your guard drops down. And that's when danger can set in. And with certain groups of people, you're okay to do that. But with others, that can be very dangerous. We all want to be accepted by the people around us. And because we like to be accepted, we sometimes let down our guard. And we need to have guardrails in the area of people, of friendships, family, people that we associate with all the time for direction and protection. Here's an article that I found quite interesting. It was written by neuroscientist Maureen Cerf. He was a professor at Northwestern University, and for many years he was studying about relationships, and here's some of the things that he wrote that he discovered. When it comes to influencing other people, it isn't just behavioral, it's actually neurological, something that happens in your brain. The brain waves of people, when they spend a lot of time together, they actually begin to think identical. Brain waves begin to line up with those around you that you spend much time with. Now, that can either encourage you or discourage you. But he goes on to say, the more we study engagement, we see time and time again that just being next to a certain person actually aligns your brain with them. You know, I sometimes wonder why my wife thinks more like me all the time, or why I think more like her, or why we know each other so well. It's because we're spending time together, quality time together, and we're starting to gel together. So as you look around yourself to your left or your right, of people sitting with you today, and you think, wow, do I really want to be like them? And then he goes on to finish up with this. He says, this isn't just behavioral, this is neurological. If people want to maximize happiness, if you want to minimize stress, you should build a life surrounding yourself with people who embody the traits that you prefer. Over time, you will naturally pick up those desirable attitudes and behaviors. And I think that could also be the negative attitudes and behaviors. Plain and simple, your life is going to look like the people around you, whether it be good or bad. So, we need to realize, and I hope you realize, that your future will be and has been impacted by the people you're in community with, by the people you do life with. Now, interesting enough, if we go back 3,000 years, about 3,000 years ago, before we were able to look at the brain with like scientifically what we can do today, King Solomon, who was considered one of the wisest men who ever lived, he makes a statement that really punctuates what this Moran Sheriff said. He said, you know, about how our brains can line up with different things. And we can find more about this as we go into the Bible, into the book of Proverbs. So take your Bible and turn to Proverbs chapter 13. And we'll find this book is filled with many other one-line statements about moral truth. So as we look at Proverbs 13:20, and I want to encourage you to highlight or underline some of these things, but here's what Solomon says, Proverbs 13:20. He says, walk with the wise and you. Now remember, the brain thing I just talked about. Here it is. No efforts needed. You don't have to remember anything. You don't have to study for a test. Just remember, if you walk with the wise, and you will over time become wise. It's going to happen. Now, kids, don't think this means you don't have to study. Don't think this means you can hang out with your professor for a couple days and think, oh, wow, I hang out with them, I'm going to know everything that they know. It's not quite that way. You still have to study for your test. But Solomon is saying, automatically, with no effort, walk with the wise, and you will, over time, become wise. It's that simple. Now, we could say that's wisdom. Or we might ask ourselves, well, what is wisdom? And well, wisdom is when you understand that life is connected, that the dots connect, and the decision that you make in life, whether as a child or a teenager or as a spouse and an adult parent, whatever it may be, they will not only affect your past, but they will affect your future as well. Now, it starts to get interesting. Because Solomon says, if you spend time with wise people over time, you will become wise. And wisdom's contagious. And imagine that, it just rubs off. Do life with wise people and you'll be wise, and you'll hopefully make wise choices in your life. However, in contrast, he says, but for a companion of fools ultimately suffers harm. Now, the Jews knew what a fool was. It was a person who did not live carefully. It's not a word we use a lot today, but a fool was somebody who didn't understand that the decisions I make connects to the past and to the present. A fool was someone who just lives for the day. A fool is a person who looks like, well, tomorrow is tomorrow, and when I get to tomorrow, I'll deal with tomorrow, but for today, I'm just going to live with the way I want. And remember last week when the Apostle Paul said, walk carefully, live carefully, be careful where you step. Solomon's essentially saying here, a fool is someone who's just not careful. But now the interesting thing about what Solomon said is that it's kind of like what he doesn't say. He says, walk with the wise and you become wise. Okay, we get that. If I hang out with wise people, I become wise. You could kind of expect him to say, well, you hang out with fools, you'll become a fool too. But he doesn't say that. He says something much worse. He says, a companion with fools doesn't just make you foolish, but if you hang around with fools, you too will suffer harm. Spend time with, surround yourself, do life with fools. Over time, you're not going to just be a fool, but you're going to suffer harm. So as we look at my message today, it's kind of like about proximity. Things that are around you. The closer you hang out with wise people or the closer you hang out with foolish people is going to result in your life of how you live, whether as a wise or a foolish person. Now, every parent, you get this. Because you don't want your kids hanging out with certain kinds of kids. Not because they're necessarily going to do what certain kids do, but because of the harm that may come from them from the things their friends choose to do. And the same thing is for adults. We need to look at who we hang around with, who we do life with, because of the harmful things or the attitudes or the habits that can come to your life by what they do or do not do. And that is why we need to have guardrails in the area of friendships or relationships with people around us. It's not about being judgmental. It's about making good judgment. So remember, the point of a guardrail is a system that's there to direct us and to protect us from the danger zone. Remember, a guardrail is not in the danger zone. A guardrail isn't right on the line, but the guardrail is inside the safety zone to help us make wise choices to protect us. Let me quickly give you 5 reasons why you should have guardrails in the area of friendships in your life. Number 1, when it dawns on you that your core group isn't moving in the same direction you want your life to be moving, that should light up your conscience. When it dawns on you that your friends are not moving in the same direction that you should be going in your life, that should wake you up. We love the same music, we love the same food, we have so many things in common, but when I look at the direction that you are moving, it's really not a direction I want my life to go. And that's a warning, that's a guardrail. A guardrail needs to be established there, that it's not a good or a bad thing, it's just that wisdom thing that makes you pay attention. When you're surrounded by a group of people that you have a lot in common with, you drop your guard and you let life begin to happen. And then suddenly it dawns on you that they're not moving in the direction that you feel that you ought to be going with your life, and that should tip you off that perhaps maybe you need to rethink this group of friends or this group of associates. It's not being judgmental. It's just making good judgments. The second thing is when you catch yourself pretending to be someone other than who you really are. That should light up your conscience. When you're when you catch yourself pretending to be someone other than who you really are. In other words, if you find yourself saying yes, and in your mind you're saying no, you need to be thinking about that. When you feel the pressure to pretend to be somebody other than who you truly are, there's a red flag there. That should light up your mind and make you start to think about or rethink about the nature of this relationship. Don't settle for friends who are forcing you to pretend to be somebody you're not to be. The third thing we find is when you feel pressure to compromise, that's another guardrail or another red flag. Because once you've compromised, that's when you've already gone past the guardrail into the ditch. When something normally wasn't a real temptation to you, and suddenly now it's becoming a live option, that should light up your conscience as well. No thanks. You go ahead. I'm going to go home now. You guys, you ladies, you go ahead. Just you have fun. And as you're driving yourself home, you suddenly start to think, maybe I should have went along. What could it hurt? And what has never been a temptation before, never had been an issue, never been a problem, suddenly in your mind becomes a live option, a real consideration, and now you start to think, is it really all that bad? Maybe it's not a question about, is it something that was right or wrong to do? Maybe it's not something that was morally wrong, but was it or is it the wise thing to do? Remember, it's too late to make the decision after you've hit the guardrail or crossed over the yellow line. You need to have the guardrail established to protect you, to keep you from going out into the ditch. The fourth thing we find is when you catch yourself thinking, I'll go, but I won't participate. Yeah, right. How many of us have been there? You know, we can laugh about this, but, you know, I'll go, but I just won't participate. Let me put it this way. You have a 14-year-old daughter. And she says, hey, Dad, it's just me and my girlfriend. We're going to the party. These two guys are going to pick us up. And no, the parents aren't home at the party, but that's okay. And yeah, they may do some bad things, Dad, but honest, you know, I'm just not going to participate. And you say, oh, yeah, honey, that's fine. You go right ahead. Yeah, right. No. If you're a wise man, you give your daughter two options. Maybe you don't say no, but you give her these options. You say either you stay home or I go with you. You choose. It's not going to just be the two guys in the car with you. There's going to be three of them, and one of them is going to be me. So we wouldn't buy this from our kids. So why do we buy it from ourselves? And when you start having that conversation that says, you know, that you know, you're bumping up against this guardrail that says, you know, I'll go, but I won't join in. I won't participate. There should be some red flags there. And number 5, when you hope the people you care about don't know your whereabouts. When you're trying to hide where you've been, where you're going. And even then, once you get there, you're suddenly thinking about, you know, well, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not breaking any laws. I'm not being unfaithful. But I'd be kind of embarrassed if my family or my friends knew that I was here. And the fact in your heart and in your mind you have begun to have this conversation, you know, if you don't want people to know where you are, the people that you care about, then you have no business being there. And you may say, okay, these things may be fine for my kids, my spouse, for other people, but I'm fine. I don't need these guardrails. And if that's what you're thinking about here this morning, you really need them. And if I could get down on my knees and beg you to establish guardrails in this area of your life, I would. And here's why. Because, first of all, what I've learned in life. I know that I need to have guardrails in my life relating to my friends and friendships and associates because of I need to be careful that I don't go places where I should not go. I think we need to have guardrails, and here's why I think you need to have guardrails in this area of your life because of the stories that I hear from people who have crossed into the danger zone. People who just had the yellow line and they've crossed over and now their life is in trouble or their life was in trouble and they've really broken relationships, they've broken friendships because they went too far. I think we need to have guardrails in this area of our life because of the culture, the world we live in. The culture is going to say, it's okay. Do those things. Go to those places. Associate with those people. Don't worry about it. And we need to have guardrails in this area of our life because there's people that are going to wake up the next morning, and maybe it's you, and you're going to stumble into the bathroom, and you're going to look into the mirror, and you're going to stand there and wonder, how did this happen? How did this happen to me? How did I ever get here? Where is my life heading? I have so many regrets. And what happens is you begin to say, if I only had some guardrails in this area of my life to keep me out of the danger zone. if I only had some guardrails to protect me, to direct me, to keep me out of the danger zone. So let me wrap up with this. Jesus said something so very significant about all this relating to friendships. See, one day there was this group of religious leaders who always challenged the things that Jesus said. A little bit like our kids, as we give suggestions or orders to our kids, they always challenge us. Well, these religious leaders were always challenging Jesus. But one day, what Jesus says to them is very powerful. It's in Luke chapter 7, verse 35. Jesus says this. He says, wisdom is proved right by all her children. In other words, time will tell. Wisdom will have the last bat. And I guarantee you that there will always be people who will give you an argument or a counterpoints for these 5 suggestions I just shared with you. But wisdom will always be proved right by the outcome. Culture, people, they're going to accuse you of being judgmental for establishing guardrails when it comes to friendships and other areas of our life. Personal guardrails are not a lack of concern for other people. They're not for a lack of the love for other people. They are about loving and caring for others. And when it comes to guardrails, I've been thinking about this whole thing in conjunction with this COVID-19. Right now, there's a lot of controversy. There's a lot of discussion about the red and the yellow and the green zone. A lot of controversy about when should we come back together? When can we do this? When can we do that? And yes, we want to get our business owners back into business. We want to get them in there and doing all those things. We want to get back together, to regather in the church together again. But we need to have guardrails. And we may not like them, but they're there to protect us. We need to be distancing ourselves for now. We need to be wearing our mask when we're in groupings together. And these guardrails are there. They're established for our protection and the protection of others. We don't like them, but they direct us. They protect us from the danger zone. So as we as a church are looking to regather sometime soon, and I know it's not going to be in May, but maybe sometime in June. I don't know when yet it's going to be. And we as leaders are having discussions. We're having the conversations. What is safe? Where do we go? How do we go? How do we get there? What are the guardrails? Not just the painted lines that we can cross over and get into trouble. What are the guardrails to protect us? So, here's the bottom line. Guardrails, guardrails are about your future hopes and dreams. Your future marriage, your future relationship with your kids, your future with your finances or jobs. We all need to establish some guardrails in our lives. You'll be glad you did, or you wish you had in your life. Next week, we're going to be talking about guardrails about sexual immorality. Tough subject. And we're going to be going to the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 6. And we're going to be looking at morally dangerous environments that are around us that call and set the importance of having guardrails. So I hope you come back and be here for that. But as we end today, I want to just take us to a song that says, by Lauren Daigle, it says, "You Say." And some of the lyrics of the song say that, I keep fighting the voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. And I'm more than just the sum of every high and low. Remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know. Our friends, we have a lot of good friends, and I hope you have a lot of good friends, and they will help guide you in the right direction. But sometimes we have those friends or those associates that we will regret ever having a part of our life, because they are going to guide us in a wrong direction. Be smart. Be wise. And as we close and we worship with this song, let the words speak to you. Those voices that you're fighting in your mind, is it the Lord speaking to you, your conscience is trying to direct you in a good way? Or is it Satan that's down there just saying, hey, don't listen to those. Don't worry about those guardrails. Because he wants you in the ditch. He wants you off the edge of the road. Establish guardrails in your life. Father God, thank you for the words of Solomon, talking about wisdom. And Father, may we have your wisdom infiltrate into our minds. Because as the neurologist was saying, we gain the insight, we gain the brain waves of those we walk close to. Father, if we're walking close to you, if we're living with you, if we have you in our life day in and day out, we will gather your wisdom as well. And Lord, I pray that each of us have that desire. So Lord, as we go through this week and we look at the different things that life brings our way, as we're driving down the highway of life, protect us, Father. Guide us away from the edge of the road. Help those guardrails to keep us in the center where we need to be, where we'll be safe and following you. Father, let us worship together with this song that says, you say, amen.
I keep fighting voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know. Ooh, oh, you say I'm loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I'm strong when I think I'm weak. And you say I am held when I am falling short. The only thing that matters now is everything you think of me. In you I find my worth, in you I find my identity. Taking all I have and now I'm laying it at your feet. You'll have every failure, God. You'll have every victory.